The content of this podcast, Generation Mom, is for entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and their guests are their own and do not constitute professional advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, this podcast is not intended to replace or substitute for any professional, medical, financial, legal, or other advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your specific situation. Thanks for listening. Hi, Rachel here. This episode contains discussions about sensitive topics, including eating disorders and suicidal ideation. We recognize that these subjects can be distressing and may affect listeners in different ways. Please proceed with caution and prioritize your mental and emotional well-being. If you or someone you know is struggling with eating disorders or thoughts of self-harm, we encourage seeking support from mental health professionals, or if you're in the U.S., contacting the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing or texting 988. Thank you for listening and taking care of yourself.
I remember being on my first diet. I probably was 8 when I was on my first diet. And today I view that as very unhealthy. And I think it's just a natural period that kids go through. And if they're left alone, they'll get through it and do okay. But if it's shamed and if you're dieted, then you set up this whole domino effect for the rest of your life. You're going to be dieting for the rest of your life. And so in my family, the motto was, you can never be too thin or too rich. I think about that today, and I think about how anorexia has become a very big problem. And obviously, you can be too thin.
Hello, and welcome to Generation Mom. I'm Rachel, the elder millennial who tries to stay grounded in all of the chaos of modern parenthood.
I'm Pam, the boomer mom to my 2 co-hosts and Nana to their kids. I've seen it all, and I'm here to share my generational wisdom with a touch of tough love.
And I'm Laurel, your Gen X voice of reason, stuck in the middle, ready to weigh in with unsugar-coated advice.
Join us as we tackle life's big questions across 3 generations, sharing laughs and insights along the way. This is Generation Mom. Welcome back to episode 7 of Generation Mom. Today we are talking about body image and diet culture and our perspectives being of different generations. I have the tissues on the table already. It's a hard topic for, I think, all of us personally.
Yeah.
And then for women in general, I think we have a lot of pressure on us based around how we look. And it's changed over the generations, even the expectations of what we should look like. So I wanted to do a quick dive into beauty standards over the generation. This is from a website called Science of People. So if we start out when Mom was younger in the 50s, this was still the era of the golden age of Hollywood, the 30s to the 50s. The ideal woman was described as having curves, an hourglass figure, large breasts, and a slim waist. That boyish figure of the 1920s had gone out the window, and this hourglass figure was ideal. So the classic example of this is Marilyn Monroe. She had the ideal body in the 50s. So then you get into the 60s, and there's this trend that comes in from London with the model Twiggy that's more willowy, thin, long, slim legs, and almost an adolescent physique. So smaller breasts, just a very straight look in the 60s. That seemed to be the ideal there. In the 80s, you have the rise of the supermodels. So Cindy Crawford being a prime example. And this body type is athletic. It's svelte, but still curvy, tall with toned arms. It's a period of time that brought about an exercise craze. So you have Jane Fonda's workout and
Rockin' to the
oldies. So you're encouraging women to be thin, but also to look fit. So then you get into the 90s, and I don't know where it all goes wrong, but then you get into heroin chic. So there's this very like starving look of the 90s. It's wayfish, it's extremely thin, there's translucent skin, but really women who looked thin, frail, and neglected. So the model Kate Moss was the heroine of heroin chic. She was very pale and thin. And I don't even think Kate Moss today looks like the Kate Moss of the 90s. It was this very impossible ideal and also pretty unhealthy ideal in the 90s. And then the 2000s to today, you have this, they call it the postmodern look. You have a flat stomach, you're a more healthy skinny, but you have large breasts and butt, and you have a thigh gap. So it's this very unrealistic expectation of women. Kim Kardashian is set as this standard where even Kim Kardashian doesn't really look like that, or she has a lot of help to look like that. So you're expected to be skinny, but not too skinny, but still have large boobs and a big butt, but have a flat stomach. So you see a lot more women having plastic surgery these days. You also have social media filters giving unrealistic expectations for beauty. And I think the common thread through all of these eras is women are trying to mold themselves into a body type that maybe they don't have, or into an ideal image that not everybody can fit into. You might be expected to look one way this decade, but then the next decade look a different way. Growing up, what were your experiences with body image and expectations around how you were supposed to look?
There was always a sense that you're supposed to be thin. There was a lot of push toward dieting, even when I was a kid. Most kids go through that period where they pre-adolescent, they gain some weight, they look chubby. That was bad. I remember being on my first diet. I probably was 8 when I was on my first diet. And today I view that as very unhealthy. And I think it's just a natural period that kids go through. And if they're left alone, they'll get through it and do okay. But if it's shamed and if you're dieted, then you set up this whole domino effect for the rest of your life. You're going to be dieting for the rest of your life. And so in my family, the motto was, you can never be too thin or too rich. I think about that today, and I think about how anorexia has become a very big problem. And obviously, you can be too thin. You can be dangerously thin. We never had that said to us. It was always, oh, you're too fat. And I look at pictures of myself now at that time, and I was not fat, but I thought I was because that's what people were telling me. And it got particularly bad, like you said, in the 60s with Twiggy. I don't know who besides Twiggy could have a body like Twiggy.
And Twiggy doesn't even have Twiggy's body anymore
No.
either.
Age gets us all.
Yeah.
But I think that was very damaging, and damaging psychologically to all of us, because for my entire life, I've always had the feeling I'm not thin enough. I'm not thin enough. And so what that did for a while was it created a weight problem that I had most of my life. And so you build up all these unhealthy issues toward food. So you're binging and purging and doing all of this starving and eating, and it becomes a real problem psychologically. It continues, which is too bad, because we know the dangers now of diet culture. And I am now of the belief that dieting doesn't really work. I really think that obesity is a disease, and I think that it has to be treated in various ways. Yes, with diet and exercise, but also for a lot of people with medication. And the horrible fat shaming that goes on. and continues to go on is really so detrimental to people. And I remember that I used to put my life on hold. Like I'd say, I'll buy that dress when I lose 10 more pounds, or I'll go to on that trip when I get thinner, or oh, I'll go skiing when I can fit into my snowsuit, which is terrible because you're putting your life on hold. And I think I had to be almost 40 years old before I really stopped doing that. And that was around the time that I thought I just have to be happy with what I am, and I'm probably not going to change. I might as well live my life and stop putting everything on hold, which I hope people do more today.
How did your upbringing and your feelings around weight, how do you feel like that influenced how you taught us about body image or sort of treated body image with your kids, or what fears did that bring up for you around raising two girls?
I think I didn't do a very good job. I think I was very indoctrinated as a kid and as a young adult. And I was deathly afraid that you girls would go through what I went through, but I didn't handle it the right way. I would do it totally differently today. And I think it was probably worse for Laurel than it was for you.
I think it impacted us in different ways.
Yeah, but I think if I had left you alone, I think you would have been fine. But I also put her on a diet very young, and that was not good. And I don't want to say I tortured her, but I did a lot of talking to her about the consequences of being fat and, that kind of thing. And I really regret that now. I should not have done that. And I wish I had been smarter at the time. But I was going through my own anxiety with weight. So you can be as honest as you want to be.
Okay.
I'm here to own whatever
Okay.
I did, because I know I did do some bad things and I shouldn't have. But I think you agree that I'm much different today than I was then.
Oh, on a lot of things, in a lot of ways. Yeah. I remember having really negative view of myself very young. I had a specific friend who was always picture perfect, and I always felt just the ugly, messy sidekick to her. And I remember being aware of weight at a very young age and look at pictures of me. I'm talking 7, 8 years old. Like, I looked like a normal kid, I think, at that point. But even then, I remember being very aware that I was the frumpy one. I was the overweight one. I was the ugly one. And I did get put on a series of diets. I went through a very awkward stage around 5th grade. I also had an extreme acne problem, so that didn't help things. But I pudged up a bit. I had horrible acne, and there was Weight Watchers, there was Jenny Craig, there was just diets. Somewhere around 12, 13, I slimmed down, and we were doing that fun exercise class for a while together, and I really enjoyed that. That's like the only exercise I've ever actually enjoyed. And that one summer, you must have gotten some sort of pass or something, all you want to take pass, because we were literally going 5 days a week. And it was fun. And
Yeah, we both got pretty thin that summer.
Yeah. I don't know if that's when you were on the Jenny Craig and you really lost a lot. But
I was either on Jenny Craig or Nutrisystem.
Yeah. And I enjoyed it. And I don't usually enjoy that kind of thing. But it was also fun. It was the two of us. We'd go to lunch after or go shopping. I don't know. It was summer. It was fun. We'd go swimming. And they'd play oldies. And we'd have this whole routine and everything. It was fun. But then, I don't know, I remember by freshman year, pudging up again. And somewhere freshman, sophomore year, I remember, the negative calorie diet. And it had come to my awareness that celery has negative calories because it's just water and fiber. And you burn more calories eating it than you consume. And so I was eating celery sticks, Diet Coke water, and then I'd eat a small dinner with you guys. And I was walking a lot, several miles a day in the neighborhood, and really just trying to lose weight. And up for so long, I lost, I don't know, 10 pounds maybe. Still didn't get back down to that jazzercise size I was. I never saw that again. And I remember like everything that was wrong with my life. And this goes on throughout my life. I didn't have friends, or I didn't have a boyfriend, or I didn't get into something or whatever. It all was always blamed on being fat and ugly. And that was just my mantra to myself. And
You mean you were blaming yourself?
yeah, that was my excuse. If I were thin, my life would be perfect, like everything about it. And looking back and knowing myself now, knowing a lot more than I do now, I'm also extremely socially awkward, and I have a social anxiety disorder and all that. Now I can say, oh, that all played into all that too. But I didn't know that at 16. I also had a panic disorder that was undiagnosed at that point. Like there was a lot going on with me. But that was my first sort of anorexia situation. And then I never really ventured into bulimia, although I can't say I've never made myself throw up, but usually it's because I literally just feel so gross and I've eaten way too much and my stomach just really hurts. It's not oh, I need to be thin kind of thing. And then I remember writing in my journal that I would never let myself get to a certain weight. And like I had plans if I ever hit that number on the scale. And by senior year, I was over that number and I'm still here. And then freshman year of college, by Thanksgiving, I lost a ton of weight without even knowing it. I had no idea until I came home for Thanksgiving. And mom's like, all your clothes are falling off of you. And I was riding my bike everywhere. It was a big campus. I was walking everywhere, had the dorm cafeteria that was only open at certain times, so I didn't have unlimited access really to food. I wasn't shopping or eating around the city a whole lot at that point. And it was completely effortless. It really was. And I didn't try to lose weight. I wasn't even aware I had. And mom took me shopping, and I just remember she'd keep bringing in a smaller size and a smaller size, and I kept trying it on and just being like shocked that I was fitting into these sizes that I hadn't seen like my whole life. And by the end of college, I was the largest I'd ever been. And then when I came back here, around the time I started teaching, around the time I broke up with my boyfriend, I was put on a medication. And that is really the only time in my life I've had no appetite. And just thinking about food would turn my stomach. I would try to eat a sandwich and couldn't get through it. I just didn't want to eat anything. And I lost a good bit of weight as a result of that, but ultimately went off the medication because of other side effects I was having that were just too detrimental. But I kept the weight off for several years until I got married. And then within minutes of getting married, I was huge again. I don't know. I don't know how this weight comes and goes. And then I've just kept going since then. I haven't been thin since then. And I've had 2 babies. I haven't been on a scale in years. I have no idea what I weigh right now, but I'm huge. And I'm at this point now where I just can't care anymore. I can't. It's too much effort. It's too much mental energy. It's too much self-bashing. It's too much envy. It's just, I can't, and I don't have it anymore. I don't have the willpower. I don't have the energy. I don't have what's it going to do? I'm almost 50. I'm married. I have kids. Like at this point, what does it matter? That's where I'm at. And the sort of consequences, I have very few pictures of myself with the family, with my kids, any of that. I hate the way I look. I hate the way I look in pictures. Kids will take pictures of me and all I can see is how many chins I have and how my stomach folds over or whatever. And to throw this all out there, but I had this gorgeous, thin sister who was popular and beautiful and sweet and made friends easily. And there was that to it too. And I think that I know now as an adult that she had her own struggles that she's about to tell us about. But I think a lot of that came from secondhand what I was going through. She was witnessing what I was going through and what I was being exposed to and internalizing all of that and trying to avoid it on her own. So that's my story.
I think that I was very panicked about your health and all of that. And also because I knew that you were unhappy with yourself. And I think that the first time that this ever came up was when you were really little. You were about 6, I think, or 7. And kids teased you on the playground that they told you were fat and you weren't. And I remember having a talk with you then about how you're not fat, but you were convinced. But Mom, they say I'm fat, I must be fat. I was trying to help you. I didn't help you though. I did it the wrong way. And I wish I could go back now and redo it, because I think that my own obsession with weight and my own feelings about myself surrounding weight and my body dysmorphia, which I still have, I think really negatively impacted you. And I'm sorry about that. I really am. I feel terrible about that. And I also grew up in a family where it was just a crime to be fat and you were just taken to task. So I had that as my role model, which was not a good role model. And as years went by and I thought about it, I recognized that was not the right way to go about it. And as I said before, I really believe it's a disease and that some of us just metabolize food differently. And in order to lose weight, and I know this was true for you too, in order to lose weight, I had to restrict so much that I know I got to a point in my life where I said, this just isn't worth
This
it.
isn't worth it.
I have very few enjoyments, and this is one of them. I enjoyed cooking, I enjoyed eating, and why can't you enjoy that? Some people can enjoy it and not have a problem. I think I got to the point where you are now, where I said, forget it. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm married happily. I'm so many years old and I've lived my life. I don't have to date anybody. And really, I think even if I had to date somebody, they would pretty much have to take me as I am. So yeah, I think I do. I take a lot of responsibility for your feelings.
I grew up, I'm 6 years younger than Laurel, so I was like the audience to this. And I was a pretty skinny kid. I was a chubby young kid,
Baby.
toddler,
Yeah.
baby. My
You were chubs.
grandfather, my mom's father used to call me little fat face. That was his thing. But I was naturally thin for most of my childhood and through high school. I remember knowing I shouldn't be fat because that was bad. That was the message I got. I remember being a little kid, maybe 6 or 7, and we were clothing shopping, and I think we were in a store. And I think it was like a plus size store, but it had like teenager clothes. And I made a comment like, I want to wear clothes like this one day, meaning like I wanted to wear the cool teenager clothes. And you said, no, you don't. These clothes are for fat people. And I just got the message.
Said that?
Yeah, you said that. And I think I just knew like I needed to be thin. And luckily I was a pretty intuitive eater. I ate when I was hungry. I don't know. It wasn't something I really felt I thought about until my senior year of high school. I was dating a boy who really liked carbs, and he would make these like Lipton rice packets and these Lipton with some other grain like orzo pasta or something. And it was
He'd eat pasta and rice.
Pasta and rice.
Yeah.
And so I'm eating this, and then we went to this place called Doc Che's a lot. That was a noodle house. So I was eating a ton of carbs, and I gained a lot of weight my senior year. And I was very upset with myself. I gained my freshman 15 basically the year before I went to college. And so I think I was about 130 pounds, which I'm 5 feet tall. So that is more like 130 pounds on a 5 foot tall person looks different than like on a 5'5" person. But I thought I was fat. I went to college not feeling very good about myself. But because I was at college, I could limit what I was eating. So I pretty much, I think my freshman year, I lived off of rice cakes. And my, I think the same for my sophomore year. I had like ridiculous diets. I would eat like rice cakes, I would measure my cereal out. And so I dropped the weight over those first 2 years. And our college had a beautiful state of the art gym because it had a really good physical therapy program. So it had this amazing gym. So I also lived up on a hill. So I'd walk down the hill to class and then up the hill every day back to my dorm. And it's a residential campus. So I'm walking everywhere. I'm going to the gym pretty much every day. So I dropped the weight pretty quickly and I got really positive response to dropping the weight, and I kept dropping the weight, and I kept limiting what I was eating and exercising. And I remember there was this sort of trend called pro Anna, and it's pro anorexia. And I would look at these pro Anna websites that talk about how if what is that? It's attributed to Kate Moss. I don't know if she said it, but nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a size 00 in Abercrombie and Fitch clothes, so that's probably even less than, than that. I was super, super thin. And I remember one night I was living in an apartment by this time, and some friends came over and we had been drinking, and I got on the scale and I was 94 pounds, and I was devastated because I was up 4 pounds from being 90 and I wanted to be 89 pounds. That was my goal. And even that skinny, I still thought I was fat. I would still look in the mirror and find every flaw, and I would just see where I could lose weight. And I didn't like that my stomach folded a little bit when I sat down. I wanted a completely flat stomach. And I think junior or senior year was when you guys started getting concerned because I was super duper thin.
Yeah, you were looking sickly. Your cheeks were sunken in. You had this gray tone to your skin.
Yeah.
I mean, you were really starting to look
heroin chic.
Hey.
And I was trying, I don't think, and this was like early 2000s, but it was still like the thigh gap was a thing. You didn't want your thighs to touch. And I worked in Manhattan the year I graduated. And so there I was walking constantly. And so it was easy to stay that thin there. But I remember there were all these supermodels in New York. You just see them walking down the street. All these, maybe they were models or not, but they're all gorgeous and they're all tall and they're all super duper thin. And I remember talking to one of my colleagues. I was like, look, her thighs don't touch, and she's got this tiny little bottom. And she was like, you look like that. And I didn't believe her. And I remember, I don't know, there was so much I didn't let myself enjoy because I was so worried about how I looked. And I remember, I think I went back up to Ithaca to visit some college friends. Like we all met up there and we had gone hiking, and a friend took pictures. And this was like when you could first, I sound so old. You could first share pictures online. I forget if it was on their like live journal or whatever, but they posted the pictures that they had taken. And I had a tiny little, I probably had a sandwich or something, like just teeniest little bump, but I just obsessed over it the whole day, how fat I was. And like now, 20 something years, 30 something years later, like I'm still like remember how I felt. And so I moved back to Atlanta and wasn't walking as much, but I still didn't, like, I put some weight back on that honestly I probably needed to put back on, but I beat myself up over it. And even I remember on my wedding day, like not wanting you to tighten my dress too tight because I was worried about back fat and having back fat. And then my dress was falling down half the night because I didn't let you guys tighten it as much as you needed to tighten it because I was worried it would look bad in the photos. I mean, I have had body dysmorphia forever probably, but definitely starting in high school through today. And it's hard because I've had two very giant babies and my body is different now. Like my bones are wider. My like things are shifted around. My body's different. I weigh more than I did. I feel like I weigh too much. I definitely have more of a stomach that some of that's from just being stretched out. I'm trying to accept myself for how I am, and I feel like that's a daily practice. And I feel like I live in a time where there's a lot more body positivity, and there's a lot more social media accounts around body positivity. There's this one Birds Kapai, but she's gorgeous. She was just walked the catwalk for Sports Illustrated. And that's the other thing. You never would have seen like a normal looking person doing anything for Sports Illustrated in the 80s or 90s or even early 2000s. And so we're in this place now where the fact is we can't all look like supermodels. The supermodels don't even look like supermodels. Like that's airbrushed, and it's also a moment in time. If somebody had taken a picture of me at 20 years old and then showed it to me today and was like, why don't you look like that? That's unfair. That's a snapshot. That's like a moment in time. We're constantly changing. Our bodies, our cells regenerate every 7 years. Like we're not the same physical people. And so one big area has been swimming with my kids, and I'm all about put on the bathing suit and get in the pool because your kids aren't going to remember what you look like. They're not going to care what I look like in a bathing suit, but they care that I'm in the pool with them swimming. But I am bad about photos. And whenever my husband takes a picture of me, for some reason, I look horrible. But he catches me at the worst time. But I'm trying to be better about getting in the photo too, because I know I'll be older one day and wish I had more photos with my kids. I think it did impact me a little bit differently because I wasn't getting the brunt of it, but I was watching like what it did to you and what it did to you. And I think I went to a few Weight Watchers meetings with you when I was a kid, just like you didn't have anywhere else to take me. So I went along, and I went to an exercise class, and I feel like my relationship with exercise has changed a lot too, because I think I did it in college more for physical benefits, and then I got really into yoga in my late 20s and 30s, and I did that more for the mental benefits. And now I go and walk every day, and I think it really is more for my mental health than trying to lose weight and just to stay healthy and active. And also I want to stay active because I want to be able to maybe play with my grandkids one day. Like I want to be able to get up and down off the floor. Like so now I feel like I look at fitness like I'm doing these things so that I can stay flexible and be able to move until I'm very old. What role has media played in shaping your perception of body image?
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly being inundated with these photos of what is supposed to be perfect. And we all have certain body types, and not all of them are considered perfect body types. And I don't care how much you diet, you're not going to change your basic body type. Whether you're an apple or a pear or a tangerine or whatever you are, you're basically going to be that body type. You might be a smaller one. I've gotten quite thin recently, and I'm never going to be that ideal body type, no matter how thin I get. And I think it took me a while to realize that. And growing up, you're just supposed to diet and, oh, you'll have this perfect body type and you'll grow 5 inches and you'll look like a supermodel. That's not true. And so we're chasing after the impossible dream. And I think that's so unfair for young girls and women. We're never going to be the ideal. And even the ideals aren't the ideals. They're having Brazilian butt lifts and they're having ribs taken out.
Oh my God.
So their waists are thinner, and we're doing all of this stuff to our bodies that I don't think, if we had the pressure on us from the media and the internet now, I don't think that a lot of that would be done. There's a lot more plastic surgery today than there ever was, and younger. When I was growing up, they wouldn't do plastic surgery on a 15, 16-year-old, but they do now. And you talk about body positivity, but there's also a hell of a lot of body shaming that goes on. And that has not really changed. People are trying to address it, but even with diet culture today, people are being shamed for being on these medications, which are finally helping them lose weight. Now, why? What difference does it make? If they're taking a drug, Ozempic or Manjaro or whatever, and they're finally losing weight, they're doing what everybody has wanted them to do, and they're getting shamed for it.
And I think what happens is there's still that belief, I think, ingrained in us that you have done something wrong if you're overweight. And you're overweight because you haven't tried hard enough, or you haven't worked out hard enough. Yeah. You're lazy. And so the narrative is you're just cheating now by taking this drug. And I think that's horrible, because we know that's not true. People can not eat anything and work out every day and still not drop weight because of how your body chemistry is and how you metabolize food. And I agree. I mean, if it's helping them be healthy, why not take the drug? That's what we all wish. We all wish there was a magic pill.
Yeah.
And then there is something like that. And then we give people a hard time for taking it. I wish it was more accessible
Yeah.
than it is right now. So.
I mean, I know people think that it can be overused, and like it gets into Hollywood and every actress is taking it and whatever, but so what? That's really my attitude.
Hopefully they have a doctor following them. Yeah. But I'm someone a 1,200 calorie diet doesn't do anything for. I literally have to be on 700-800 calories to lose weight, and that's not sustainable at all.
No. Diets in general aren't sustainable.
No.
And it's like a punishment. You're being punished. And it shouldn't be like that. Food is a daily necessity. And the way I eat today is much different than how I ate in the past, because I used to sneak food and that kind of thing and hide it and all of that. So I've developed this whole disorder around food. Today, I don't hide anything. If I want to have a cookie, I have a cookie. If I want ice cream, I have ice cream. But I don't eat. What would happen is I would deprive myself so much that it would turn into a binge situation.
Yeah.
And
you rebel.
Yeah.
And if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, the whole American food industry is a nightmare because our portion sizes are ridiculous. We've got convenience foods, fast food, everything comes in a package. So it's not good for you. It's processed, it's chemicals, it's been engineered, and you're not eating real food. You're not eating the good foods you're supposed to be in. These other countries look at us and think we're crazy. And we're thinking, I've got 6 jobs and 12 kids and, I've got to get to 6 different soccer practices and we're just going to eat a pack of whatever, Lunchable or whatever on the way.
Chick-fil-A
yeah. It's all about convenience.
There was remember the Special K diet? It was like replace two
Yeah,
of
2
your
meals.
with Special K and you'll lose weight. Like, here, eat this processed
They don't
wheat.
pitch that anymore, do they?
No,
No.
because it's not healthy.
It's
for
not
you.
healthy.
And so I was in Italy last year, and we had someone on our trip who had gluten intolerance. And she decided to try some of the bread because it was like real bread made from real wheat, like nothing GMO, nothing processed. She was fine.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about the quality of our food here. And that,
well, and you also hear a lot of these other countries don't have the kind of peanut allergies we have,
right.
or the strawberry allergies we have, or the gluten intolerance we have, or the lactose intolerance we have. And it all goes down to how we're processing it and preserving it and all of that. If you were eating them fresh off the tree, I'm sure it would be a different story.
I think media has, in some ways, has changed a lot, but I think to your point, Mom, in other ways it has not. And it's very gendered also.
Mhm.
I don't think men spend as much time as women thinking about these things. Now, yes, men can have body dysmorphia and they can have body image issues and they have their own kind of body image issues to deal with. But I feel like women, we spend so much of our brain power thinking about this.
I think so much of your worth and how you're viewed as a person is caught up in how you look and what you weigh.
Mhm.
And you go into a job interview, for example, what's the first thing they do? They look at you.
Mhm.
The minute you walk in and you're overweight, they say, not good, not smart, lazy. And that isn't true. It's just not true. But some people won't even give you a chance. And so much of the romance culture is based on how you look and whether you're worthy of having a boyfriend or not.
Mhm.
And that's a terrible message to give people.
Yeah.
And women. I just think that's so bad. And then you're fat, well, you're not a good mother. You can't be a good mother. You must be lazy. You must be laying down and eating bonbons all day.
My kid's favorite thing to do to me is to play the drums on my stomach and make it jiggle. And it was funny, my daughter was pressing on my belly and she said, Mama, why is your belly so big? And my first reaction was to be offended. And then I thought about it and I said, it's so big because you used to be in there and your brother was in there. I said, do you like my belly? And she said, yeah, I do. And so she wasn't saying that as a negative thing.
Mhm.
She was just asking, why is it so big? And I think that's something too that I'm very aware of having a daughter is how I talk about my body in front of her, how I talk about her body. I do have a scale and I should just get rid of it. And occasionally she'll get on the scale and I'll say, wow, look how strong you are. Because I don't want her to think about how much she's weighing. And she's a beanpole and she lives off of cupcakes. So I don't know. But even if she wasn't a beanpole, like I'm trying to break this cycle. I don't want her to have to think about it and think that her worth is in what she looks like. And I don't want her to think about that. And I know it'll come. It always comes from school or kids or like the media. She'll get it in enough places, but I'm trying to, like, having a daughter has really forced me to think about how I'm talking about myself, how my husband even talks about himself, and we have a son. What message are we sending to him too? And it's not easy, but I don't make any sort of comment on her or her weight. I'll tell her she looks beautiful, but I also try to tell her how smart she is and how funny she is and how strong
Mhm.
she is because I want her to know that she's more than just what she looks like.
It's a struggle as a parent. I've got 2 boys, but I can't tell you it's different. Maybe my oldest is a beanpole. He's tall and thin, and he eats horribly. But I haven't had to even My concern's been getting enough nutrition into him. It's never been about his weight. My little one's pudged up this year, and I'm really struggling because initially it didn't bother me so much, but we were at a swimming party this past weekend, birthday party, and I'm realizing he is pudgier than a lot of his friends, and he's also on the smaller side, and it just is worrying me. And I'm trying. He'll go help himself to snacks after school and everything, and he'll eat an apple, but he'll also eat a handful of cookies. And I try not to interfere with that or judge on that or put anything on him, say anything. But then it's like, when do I need to step in, or do I need to step in? When I said something when we were at the doctor's office, and she said he's in the normal range, but yeah, maybe we should do a growth check in a few months and make sure he's getting ready for a growth spurt and this isn't going to be an issue. And my husband and I both have had a history of weight issues, and I don't want to put that on him, but I also don't want to make him crazy about it either. And he started, I think, sneaking food, and I don't know where that's coming from because I've never gotten on him about it. But I've noticed he's started. I was reading with him before bed one night, and he was down next to his bed, and he was sneaking something from under his bed, and I don't know what it was. And the other night he had something under his shirt, and he was standing in the corner trying to hide it. And I'm like, what is that? What's in your shirt? What do you have? And he just wouldn't, nothing. I'm like, you're going to stand there all night?
I'd leave him alone. I think he's at that age where kids sometimes beef up, and he's going to grow, and that's going to go away. And I think after his 25th cookie, it's okay to say, okay, I think you've had enough cookies now, because it's not healthy for you.
Yeah, I think that he is a sweet, awesome kid, and
he's
if
adorable.
He feels good about himself, then just let him be. I think Mom's right. If he has 25 cookies, like with my daughter, I want her to eat less cupcakes, more because I don't want her to get diabetes or something just from living off sugar, because that's one of the only things she eats. But if she's had 4 cupcakes and she wants another one, I'll say, no, that's enough. You've had 4 cupcakes. That's a lot. And we talk about how the sugar makes her feel, because she always has a sugar crash. And, so we talk more about that than about like, I don't want you to get fat. We don't say that. But I think it's one thing to teach them how to eat healthy, but it's hard. I understand it's hard for us, especially when we've had such a disordered relationship with food. So I don't know, but I think he'll be fine. But I think that was our advice portion.
I think so too.
I really appreciate both of you and your honesty and talking about this as the 3 of us, because I know we've all been in it together for all these years. And I think we all did the best we could at the time, and we're all doing the best we can as parents, and we're all here.
I think if you're not honest, you don't learn anything. And if you don't reflect on what your behavior was and what the consequences of it were, you're never going to grow. And I want this to stop with your generation. And I want there to be more acceptance, because I just think it's a terrible way to grow up, to feel bad about yourself all the time for something that you have limited control over, really. And I really appreciate you girls for giving me some grace in this, and understanding that I was a product from where I came from too. And that's not an excuse, but it does have some bearing.
Well, we love you.
I love you too.
We have a few episodes left in our first season. If you like us, please tell people about us. Please leave a positive review. You can find our website at generationmompod.com or on Instagram at generationmompod. And we'll see you next week.